Hello everybody and welcome to the Moto Mill. Thank you all for your support, and if you haven't subscribed yet, hit that button and help us get to our goals. Today our little museum's got one of the coolest bikes I've ever been around. Bultaco El Bandido. This machine was the absolute flagship for Bultaco across all the years. There would be better open class machines from them later on. Not that I can necessarily say faster, because this machine is an absolute rocket ship. This Pedrables motor makes a heck of a lot of horsepower. This motor would be pretty unique for Bultaco, a company that would usually have left-hand kick, and a lot of their models would share similar parts so that they could keep manufacturing costs cheap. This motor would only be used on two models, Bandido and Montadero. Even though it's a very, very good motor, it might have hurt the company financially. I don't think the sales on this were as good as they were hoping them to be. These machines were just a little too heavy. They came with really, really high quality front forks. The baiters were the absolute standard in this time period. The baiters on the rear are extremely high quality as well. You can see that this bike has original tires on it. Has the original rear fender and frame loop. When I bought this machine, probably about 10 years ago, this was actually a new old stock bike. This machine had never been started. When I got it, people were a little afraid of it because the motor was locked up. When I took the head off to inspect it, it was because the bike had never really had any two-stroke through it. It was still from factory assembly lube. It wasn't even rust that had frozen it up. It was just the old lubricant, actually. Cosmoline or grease or whatever you'd like to call it in there. So you can see the Kickstarter here is on the right side and the shifter there. Normally they would have rubbers on them. The Kickstarter rubber came off on the very second kick, which was actually the kick that this bike started on. It was hanging halfway off, so I saved it and I put it in a bag, as well as the shifter rubber just to hold on to for a later point in time. I could always wire tie them back on. Same thing, you'll notice that beautiful, beautiful Pirelli in the front, still with those little nubbies on them. I've probably only put between 3 to 5 hours on this machine, probably closer to the 3. Look how pretty these hubs are, and these shoulder to cront rims, all original spokes. See the little insignia on the forks there. I mean, the fit and finish on these Bultacos is just so spectacular. Now, this tank is original paint. When I got it, the bike had black paint covering across the whole tank. When I took it out to one of its first races, I got a little chip exposing the original white, so I compounded this all off. As you can see, I burned through too much in the front, so I'll probably touch that up at some point. I did replace the little El Bandido insignias there. I could see the shadows from the original, but when I was compounding, I lost it. Now, this machine is really fairly interesting. There were a couple different ways you could get Bandido. They had a TT model that had the big square number plates, the different front triple tree, should say top triple tree, with the handlebars that clipped onto the top of the forks and things like that. As well as, I believe they had slightly different porting. I know there were a few different pipes that could come on El Bandido models. This one here is a really unique mixture of TT and motocross parts, because you will notice too that I do have that 21-inch front wheel instead of the 19. I do have the normal motocross style controls up here. Somebody, I believe, put this different kill switch on, and they did add these rubber covers over the levers here. I'll show you guys. Back in 1971, somebody traded in a Honda SL350 for this machine, and then they never used it. Strange. Now you'll see here, these are the original Bultaco grips. On most of the motocross models, you would, by this year, see it where they had those little rubber ribbings down the middle of them. They had two different styles of grips. Now, in my experience, I usually only see these grips come on the TT style, so that's a little unique. And this bike, when I got it, had oval number plates on it where they had clearly taken the TT style number plates off. And they were still ugly. I mean, the TT ones were as well, but also the fiberglass ovals they had on it were. So I got reproduction side covers there, and I just kind of spaced them out with a stud in between them. I have upgraded to a uni air filter. Originally, they had an aftermarket one that was kind of like a K&N style one on this bike. I wasn't too fond of that, so I just upgraded to a little better filtration. You can see too that they added some waterproofing over the original ignition. Now this bike is using that twin plug FEMSA ignition, really high quality CDI box. I know people had issues with failures on them, but darn, for an ignition in the 1960s and going into the early 70s, those were very high quality. You'll notice some other cool pieces, like it's got the original front fender bracket. And this is the original front number plate. They were painted in this matte black. They were aluminum. They were very easily damaged. It's nice to see that this one still got it. I'll show you a really cool thing on this machine, just so you guys know this bike really is basically a new machine. See that stamping on the rim? I didn't know what that meant, so I talked to my buddy in the Bultaco club, and he said that that was just when they were building this bike. That was the stamp to say brake side, so they would know what side of the rim to lace to the brake side of the hub. Really neat. You'll also notice it's getting a little dingier after the hours I put on it, but it's got the original chain. Really cool stuff. 400 by 18 motocross rear, and I think it's a 300 by 21 in the front. It's got a nice amyl carb that works good. I always pop one of my fuel lines off on them when they're sitting, just so they don't load up if it leaks past the petcock. The paint on the cylinder starting to go. That's probably one of the weaker items on the whole machine. There have been a few little finishes on this bike that have been touched up over the years, just because, you know, the paint quality on the Bultacos wasn't super good in a lot of ways. But the rest of the fit and finish is spectacular. You can see almost every piece of hardware on this bike is original. You guys might laugh at me, but the time I use this bike the most really is probably in winter. I hate to tear up the tires, especially with the rocky terrain around here. So I try to ride this bike in the snow. Another good look at it. But if you guys want to hear this bike fire up and run against some of its competition from those years, let me know in the comments, and tell all your buddies to subscribe and all that good stuff. It's a little hard to film this bike and give it the diligence it's due all by myself. I could do a little tripod video for you guys. In fact, I'm probably going to ride it around today, so I might do that. Probably have another bike planned to do that for you guys at the moment. But just let me know what you think. Also, tell me why you guys think somebody would have done some really cool, nice features to this bike, had traded in their nice 1971 SL350, all to get this beautiful El Bandido and never ride it. I'm sure not complaining. They saved it for me. Thanks, everybody.